Welcome to a very special edition of the Clyde FC Podcast, brought to you by A State of Mind, as we turn our attention to matters off the field. And to do this, joining myself and John Boyce tonight, we are delighted to be joined by the man charged with leading the club to what we hopefully will be a successful new era. So we would like to welcome to the show Clyde Chairman Gordon Thompson. Gordon, welcome and thanks for joining us. How has the first week as chairman been?
It's been unsurprisingly quite busy, just with a few things that have been happening off the field as we try and work together. We've got a board meeting tomorrow night, so preparing for that this evening. So yeah, it's been busy and obviously not helped by last Saturday's result, but we have to get on, move on, and hopefully get 3 points this Saturday coming.
Yeah, there is always another match. That's the thing with football. Obviously, it's been a do we say turbulent start to the season? It's maybe been more downs than ups. We will obviously come to kind of footballing matters as well. Obviously, we touched upon it has been a week. I would just like to kind of maybe start the conversation tonight, just looking back to a part of your opening statement, Gordon, if I can.
Sure.
Just in relation to where you talk about the establishment of 3 working groups in the area of corporate governance, sustainability at Broadwood, and sustainability at an alternative location. And obviously, the kind of extra to that is that all of these different kind of working groups, there will be opportunities for owners to be involved. So can you just maybe give us a wee bit more of the meat on the bone, so to speak, and how you hope to achieve this and what it might look like, how to get involved, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for me, I think I use the phrase flying blind. The board needs to be better aware of what the views are of supporters and the cross-section of supporters, not just one particular group, but all across the club. And I think that's vital. So for me, using part of my own work experience in how we develop a community, develop an organisation, it has to be with the expert knowledge that's out there, and that's not just relying upon such as those who are on the board at that particular time, but incorporating all the views. So in those 3 main areas, I guess, in short, is about doing things better. That's the corporate governance one. Keeping the club safe, reflecting where things have gone wrong in the past and rectifying that, and continuing to keep the club safe through the right processes and protocols, looking at the articles. And there are some people out there that have got that expertise that we need to utilise as well. And I think where I was coming from with the working groups as well was that sometimes people are put off, I don't want to be part of the board, I don't want to do that, I don't have the time to do that, or equally, to be blunt, there's been some folk, I don't want to hassle, I just want to go along and enjoy the game. But equally, some people would like to volunteer, and the working groups are hopefully a way to try and develop that so that folk can use their experience, their knowledge, play a part in their club and help us grow without having the added responsibility of being a director of an organisation. However, there's also possibly an ulterior motive for me in that it's then also giving people an insight into running the club and saying, well, maybe that's a step that I want to take in the future, and it's a step that I'm taking on an informed basis because I know what it's like. I've spent some time volunteering, doing that particular task, and I can do or want to do a wee bit more. So that's the method or some of the thinking behind it. And again, with the 3 groups, I mean, obviously there'll be eyebrows raised again at the alternative location, but we can possibly go into that in a wee bit more detail. But again, it's about using people's experience and knowledge and skills so that we can, in the end, make better decisions, more informed, and more people being aware of the challenges that the club faces, and therefore maybe understanding a wee bit more about why decisions are made in a certain way. So it is about trying as best as we can to work better together and encapsulate the enthusiasm that we all share and the passion that we all share to make this club as successful as it can be.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's a very good point, Gordon. You know, we do have a lot of passionate fans out there that maybe haven't had an opportunity to get into the club, and you know, with these working groups, we can really get somewhere together. And I definitely think that this sort of platform will be excellent to communicate with the fans, because maybe in the past, that communication's not been there, so to speak. So yeah, really looking forward to getting involved and getting working together.
I mean, before Paul says he didn't ask my question, I will try. And again, with the what I would like for the process is that hopefully before Saturday we'll get some communication, or at least within the next week, some communication with regards to each of the groups, and just looking for folks' note of interest. What one would they like to be? Given a wee bit of and it isn't an application form of any length, it's just like a note of interest, their skills and experience, because we need to make the groups workable as well. So there may be some folk that will want to go into one group or another, and that's grand. Listen, I'm going to be sunk if folk don't want to participate. Hopefully people will, and we can get them involved. So it'll be a short, just a note of interest, skills, experience, and then we'll be able to get people on board. One thing that I haven't talked about as well is the advisory group that I want to start, and that's about a real opportunity for feedback, and also for the board to be able to put to the advisory group, here's some of the things that we're thinking about. What do you think? How do you think that would work? And for people to also to voice their views. I'll go along to a match on a Saturday and this thing happens. Now, at this moment in time, we've got our support liaison officers there that are there to help. I would love, it's on my list to try and speak to them, to get them involved if possible with those activities as well, so that they get the views of more and more supporters into the life of the club. And not only do they feel listened to, they are listened to. And, again, when I'm looking at that from just some of the discussions we have, which are sometimes quite difficult over even admission prices for the season, what the season tickets, how they, involving people so they understand all the things that have to be considered in making those decisions, as opposed to you waking up one morning, looking at the website, oh, they've decided this, why has that happened, or whatever. It's trying to get more people involved in that way.
So almost an evolution of, if you look at the club motto, your club be part of it, it's very much a kind of next step almost in that evolution of that process then, Gordon.
I think it has to be. It has to be a process, a journey, whatever you want to put it as. That's the key, because I think it's only through those sort of things that people's trust will grow. If people find the decisions are getting made in isolation, then it's two parties look at that differently. And say, oh well, we communicate, and some folk will say, well, you get this, you get that, you get that. But what we've got to understand is the perspective of some supporters is we don't do well enough, or we don't give enough detail about things, and that has to change, so that folk are fully aware of the challenges that we face, but also play a part in making this club a success.
Yeah, no. So obviously the heart of this is fans, Gordon.
Absolutely.
And we did reach out to fans. So if I may just to get the next line of conversation proceeding, is maybe throw our first kind of submitted questions to yourself, and we've kind of batched them to the kind of football on-field matters, and then more kind of boardroom strategic kind of moves kind of latterly as well. So I will go with the first one, and this, I suppose, will be interesting. So what are the specific goals for the season ahead? Is it a case of purely looking for survival in League One? And is this a realistic goal, the 8th spot and above? Or with the kind of increased budget that was notified this year at the recent kind of Q&A meeting, are we aiming to be a wee bit higher than the 8th place finish that we achieved last year?
I think quite simply, yeah, we want to be as high as we can. I mean, that's the decision that a politician would say. We want to finish the league as high as we can. Again, I've got that sort of feeling. If you aim for 8th, you might finish 9th or 10th. You've got to try high. And you were trying to think of a polite phrase to describe the start of the season. I would say poor. It's not been good, and there's been some games where we haven't played well, and it's been disappointing. But equally, as Danny said at the start of this season, his aim was higher than to finish high. You don't want to have that close shave again, and fighting against relegation. Now, we've got to be realistic and understand when you look at the budgets of Queen's Park or Cove or Falkirk or whatever, it's going to be a tough ask. But hey, we've got to work hard together as a team and to be the best that we can to get up that league, because the flip side of that is that, well, I happen to think we deserved the result against Alaba. I thought the second half performance, we deserved it, and they're one of the fancied teams. If we go into a match thinking we're just going to get beat or let's go for a draw, then that's going to happen. So we've got to go in positive, do the best that we can, because okay, there might be 2 or 3 at the top that might, stretch away a wee bit, but there's other teams there that there's not much amongst them, personally speaking. But we have to do better on the pitch as well. And, for the board's responsibility is make sure that Danny's got the tools to do that and the support to do that, and we'll try our best to achieve that. So, yeah, but being as best as we can. Let's aim for the playoff spot. But I mean, when I say aim for the playoff spot, I mean the promotion playoff spot. Let's go for that and see what happens.
So obviously you touched upon the kind of fairly sizable element of full-time teams and well-financed teams, well-backed teams in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think we probably sit? It's quite often discussed amongst the fan bases of where we rank in terms of kind of budget this season against our League One rivals. Do we have an indication as to where that is? If money was purely a where you finish in the league factor, where do you think we would realistically finish?
Good question. And the great thing is that football doesn't work out like that.
Yeah, true.
So that's, but I would say we're certainly amongst the lowest and the lowest in the league. I've no doubt about that. So I think we will be, if you split the league into 3, whereas the highest, the medium and low, we'll be on the low side, without a doubt. And I think, one of the challenges, and I don't know if this might be, you can bring me back onto things if you want, onto your order. I'm not trying to avoid any questions about the football side of it, but for me, it was described recently. I was speaking to a former, in fact, a chief exec of a Premiership club, and he gave the examples of lines of achievement, as it were. And at this moment in time, at the top of our budget, we're probably lower half of League One. Lower half of League One. That if we have a really good season, that's where we'll end up. Middle of League One. If we have a bad season financially, we could be bottom of League Two. That's the challenge. There's quite a wide range of things. What I want us to achieve as a club, and what I think we need to aim for, is if we have a good season, we want to be in that lower half of the Championship, and if we have a bad season, it's middle of League One. And there's examples and there's reasons for that, which I can go into in depth, and happy to do so. But then, I think we've got to think about it, and although there's key things that will need to change, but Arbroath, Alloas, you look at the consistent success that the Montrose have had as well. A team a club that I admire, I must admit, but it gives you something to aim for, that you can let's do that. So although some folk might think, he's really defeatist, he's talking about low budgets and everything else, that's a baseline at this moment in time, and we have to work together to change that, and I think we need to do better in that respect. And really, that may require some fairly big changes, but it needs to happen for the club to have consistent success and to give the manager, the tools to succeed.
Yeah, the budget side of things, obviously, we will come to touch upon it, but it's
Sure.
always been almost maybe a swimming against the tide feeling about it, for a number of factors. I think the location, the Broadwood element, the ability to generate income, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
When you do look at the likes of, as you mentioned, Montrose and their growth, they do have a better kind of starting ground in that front. Therefore, their budgets are higher, and you can see the success that other part-time teams have been able to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I guess it's looking at, and one of the things I think it's important to do here is to take the emotion out of it, because, you know, staff on the ground at North Lanarkshire Leisure have been brilliant with us. Great relationship with the staff there, a lot of good support, good stadium, good facilities, cracking dressing rooms when we can use them. COVID's obviously been a challenge, but you know, the facilities are there. In many ways, it is a Premiership stadium, and that's good. Of course, it's good, but equally, there's some real challenges, as you said there, with an income generation. I think it was a former chief exec at North Lanarkshire said, "Every pound that you earn is a pound that I lose," you know, and it's that sort of bluntness that you've got to realise, and so therefore it's tough. Whereas other clubs have a great deal more control over things, we've got to negotiate. Now, sometimes that isn't bad, but it means that things might need to be split three ways. We look at things, and again, just even to give a practical example, where one club recently was looking at their advertising boards. I think they're the region of about 100 advertising boards, and they're selling them at £500 a piece. So I know your wife's an accountant, Paul, but even I could work out the figure that is a fair amount of money, you know, if, you know, that you put to that they have got. Whereas we've got the opportunity at this moment in time to sell half of the stadium that you can see. We've obviously got a stand where it doesn't really matter whose advertising boards are in it, because nobody actually sees those sides. And maybe some of the boards are already been sold by the landlord, so therefore there's less opportunity. And then people say, "Oh well, what about putting tarpaulins over the seats and doing what Kilmarnock do?" And then you think, well, that actually costs a good few £1,000s to do. So rather than going to a local business saying that you get £500 for a board, could you spend £5,000 on a tarpaulin to cover the seats or something? And that's a much harder sell for the guys that are doing the commercials. And in any case, you've not got as many boards as that. You've only got, you know, a few. So whereas we might bring in a few thousand in advertising, other clubs will get 50,000, and it's that sort of disparity, just bit by bit, that challenges us, and therefore that's where the real difficulty comes in trying to get a competitive budget. And I guess going back to the sort of working groups and why I intentionally put in the alternative location and Broadwood, if we can work, as we are doing, hard with North Lanarkshire Leisure to try and work out a deal which can increase that opportunity to raise income for ourselves, then fantastic. You know, why would you move if we can do that and get that? But if we can't do it, then it is actually in the interest of the club, and that's what the board have to do. The board has to protect the club and look at the club moving forward. Then we've got to look at other alternatives where we would have the opportunity to raise income in a far better way and more in keeping with our peers. You know, because that's, for me, is the essential thing.
Yeah, I think it's a very double-edged sword, Gordon, as well, because I'm a firm believer in taking the emotion out of things, as you've said, looking at the whole process. And any key organisation has to have, you know, sustainability and consistency if they want to, you know, make profits year on year. And I think that, you know, Broadwood, as good as it is, and we all love Broadwood, it's a fantastic stadium, Premiership quality, as you say. I think it has to be looked at. Could we make, you know, X, Y amount more in a different scenario? Because at the end of the day, the club has to survive. And you were saying, you know, it's a good year. We're maybe top of or middle of League One, and a bad year we're bottom of League Two. That's a big jump. So we've really got to have consistency and sustainability. And I'm sure you'll go on to touch about what your kind of thoughts are on the key kind of points that you want to, make for the next 5 years. But I think it's something that we really need to open our eyes to as fans, because at the moment, that kind of disparity between budgets isn't great.
Well, I mean, I can turn around, and I know some folk and things have been told, some individuals, the supporters need somebody to cheer them up and tell them everything's great. And yeah, sometimes that doesn't get you very far. And I'm not going to come in here like Reverend I Am Jolly and just say everything's miserable, because we've got some cracking stuff, and we've got passionate support that can give. And, and I knew this was for a wee while, and then it was actually the guys, I'm sitting there at Montrose, and that was 2-0 going on 5 at one point, and it was looking pretty rough that day. But still the guys, and it might have been yourself actually, Boycie, behind that goal, were still shouting and cheering for the club, and it's showing that passion.
Absolutely.
And there we go. Against the odds, we get a result out of that, and we walk out there. And sometimes it is enjoyable when the opposition directors are moaning at the ref and saying, "Oh, you're going to us with you," and all that. And it's and you just got to shake hands and smile. And you get great days like that. And I've been a Clyde supporter for many years. And the people that I know through that, you think, "Jings, that's." I think that's 30, 40 years I've seen that guy's face, It's incredible, and these are the special things that we've got to nurture and make sure we use properly. I've been at the club, and I guess some ways to get an idea of it. Sorry if I'm blabbing on here, but
that's fine.
Realistic about trying to get up promotion into the championship, then you could be talking about a budget of about $500,000 for players. That's you're going up north of that, and there'll be clubs much higher than that this season. So that's conservative. I've been involved with the club for a number of years when I represented the sports trust. More than that, we had budgets down 90, 100k. And that's the challenge, and it's understanding that is the challenge that they face. So therefore, when people say, "Oh, we just need to get somebody in," you could be asking them to put in the region of about $250,000, $300,000 every single year. That's a lot of money, and the wee knock-on effect for that is, okay, get that millionaire in that's willing to put in the money for a certain period of time. What happens when he gets bored with it and stops wanting to spend his money? He says, "Well, in actual fact, I'll go out, give me $1 million to step out," and it's that. We're in that scenario which a few clubs have found themselves in. So I think, Boycie, your thing there about sustainability is crucial here. We've got to build the infrastructure around to help us, so that if somebody does come along and wants to invest money, it's the icing on the cake of something that's already there. And that, I fear, at this moment in time isn't there. We had wonderful seasons going up, or a wonderful season rather, going up through the playoffs. Never forget that afternoon, and I was down doing the touchline duty that day, and I just walked away. I was in the tunnel. I just couldn't watch it, so it's like, and funnily enough, there was that day, I do digress, so sorry about that, you'll get me back on here. There was a guy who was there. That was the day they were actually doing testing for players, drug testing for players. It was the officials that were standing there that had to stop players and make sure they went into the testing room after the game. And he wasn't understanding how I was an absolute wreck at the penalty, and it just again just shows you the passion, the desire that we want to make this club succeed. Those were great times, and they were fantastic. But equally, we did struggle financially at that time. We made losses for 2 consecutive years, and it can't go on. You constantly make losses, and that's where, and we'll make another loss this year, but that's a managed deficit due to what happened through the COVID season. So but it can. What I don't want folk to think is I'm being negative. We just have to be realistic about getting the right infrastructure in place. And for me, the building blocks have to be put in place, and that has to involve all the supporters as well, working together, not thinking that we're hiding stuff away or whatever, or not wanting success or trying to tie Danny's arms behind his back or whatever. It's about keeping the club safe, but safe and moving forward in a sustainable way.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, we've got to have the foundations to be able to have that sustainability, as you say, Gordon. We have had fantastic seasons, where we've went up, survived for a wee bit, and then unfortunately went back down. Now, I'm sure all Clyde fans would rather be sustainable in a championship sort of level, and to get there, in my opinion, as you said, we've got to have the foundations to do so, which might take a wee bit longer than some people might want, but ultimately that's what's going to be best for the club. Obviously that's just my opinion, but something that I think would be key.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So a large part of the kind of infrastructure you're talking about, Gordon, there's the boardroom side of it, the new kind of working groups and the likes, but you do obviously have the playing side. Now, we are blessed at the club to have a manager such as Danny Lennon, who is ably assisted, obviously, with Alan. There are others working behind the scenes, recruitment teams, etc. That's obviously been a widely discussed point within the fans as to the recruitment team and how that process comes about. Is this something that you could maybe give a wee bit of insight to and try and help the fans that maybe are, dare I say, underwhelmed by perhaps the recruitment team and how, and maybe some of the signings, etc. Just maybe, as I say, give a wee bit of insight as to that process.
Absolutely. And, I can also say, I'm sure Graham and PJ would be absolutely delighted to come on the podcast as well. So book them up and they can come in and speak, and you can ask questions of them there. I think it's interesting because there's been, I know probably there'll be somebody that will scan the website and say, you did call them a recruitment team. Graham does a lot more than just player recruitment. It's a major part of the role. But I think for me, possibly what we'll have to look at this, Paul, is by looking at it is where we are and where we were, and also the routes of signing players. Firstly and foremostly, there's not a single player in that squad that Danny hasn't chosen, not one player. Where PJ and Graham will work is in giving Danny options and working and highlighting players and doing and researching players. Managers is in complete control, and as I say, there's different routes. Some of the players come from Alan Moore's network. He knows them. Some of the players come from Danny's network. Danny's worked with them before and wants them in. Some players are recommended by agents. I don't think it's any secret to say Matthew Elston comes from, came from down south and was recommended to us. He has a look at him in training, and there you go. And that seems to have worked out positively so far, and that's been good to see. And then other ones come from scouts. Now, previously where we were was that we had basically maybe a contact to Danny's would look at the opposition games, but there wasn't a huge network over that, and Danny had to concentrate as a part-time manager on his role. So we looked at, right, how can we provide additional support? And this isn't meant to be disparaging to my colleagues on the board, but I'm in HR, I'm a part of the senior management team of a social care organisation in Scotland. Colleague's a dentist. We've got a retired person who was in personnel and banking. We've got a clerk of works. We've got somebody who used to be a bookkeeper and worked in wages departments. So we've got We've got a solicitor, Ian, who owns his own company. So I mean, there's skills there, but there's nobody actually that's been, as I call it, the other side of the dressing room door. So therefore, to bring in somebody with experience in networks, and Graham has networks in specifically some of the academy football, and has a knowledge of coaches and managers because he does the SFA training. So he's been involved with a lot of the managers in them getting their badges. So he knows people from that. And that's been a help and additional support to Danny, because it's been able to give Danny somebody who knows football, who knows coaching, to be able just to bounce. And you can see from Danny's fantastic in the way of, he's always talking and always likes to hear. Ultimately, though, the final decision is in Danny. He has to choose the players that he wants. How on earth would we as a board have a manager who's brought the club success suddenly pluck somebody else in and tell Danny, as an experienced manager, oh, by the way, he's going to pick the team? No chance. Danny would be away. Danny's got the final word and everything. He's chosen the players that he wants, and you know, that's what we work with always with the manager, because the head of football ops has to be more strategic. Now, where he has been helping is with regards to some of the negotiations with teams, and also the setting up of the scouting network. So we've got that now, where we've got, I think now 9 scouts across Scotland, which we didn't have before. I think we're hoping to get another person up in the Aberdeen area, and that's about keeping an eye on analysis of the opposition teams, keeping an eye on the work of different players. And I guess in an ideal world, we wouldn't have started Graham a year ago when we knew. But at that time, if you've got to remember, last summer, we felt that COVID would be back to normal. It was talked about, the League One started in October because they thought supporters were going to come back by October, and they thought it would all be normal by January. And then we had this other season. So there's been a knock-on effect from that. But now we're in a place where we've got the scouts, they're going to matches, we're getting information about the opposition, we're building up a database of the players so they can get that. But equally, when Danny mentions a player, PJ can provide that research and hand it to him, and giving Danny a much more informed choice and a better choice, and helping him out, because he's got other commitments as well as managing the club, because he's only part-time with us. So that's important. You will also have seen some people will have seen PJ, because he does further analysis for the club, and PJ will speak about that. But again, what he does is, through the first half, he will be in there, and I've talked with Danny, so he knows what Danny wants to achieve, and he'll be analysing the game, putting it into a presentation for Danny so that he can deliver to the players at half time, working out, right, here's where their weaknesses are, or whatever, or this is what's happened, or this is where. And Danny has really has said he's benefited from that, because in the heat of the moment, sometimes, you know, it's important to get remembered of this is what the aims were in mind. So it's a team effort, and that's important. But you know, some of the urban myths that have appeared. You know, they think we'd been investing in, you know, Mourinho and some of the scale of the wages or whatever. It's, you know, if they weren't there, then we would be, you know, able to afford Ronaldo. It's, you know, for a very small amount, you know, we've brought 2 guys in who are professional in the extreme, and who have provided that specialist support to the manager. And it's like everything else. We're all judging results. The directors are judging results. The manager judging results. Everyone else at the football department is judging results, and we'll see how it goes. But for me, it's been interesting to see the development of that role across clubs across Scotland. More and more people are bringing it in. From, you know, at all levels. It's not just for the great and the good, at all levels, to provide that additional support. Because again, as we talk about the old style where the manager had complete say over absolutely everything, then the manager goes, and you lose your kit man, sometimes you lose your physio, you lose your, you know, all your coaches. everything goes, and therefore, again, that was about building a structure around to support the manager and have the club being able to achieve more success. But it's early days, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, so with the new kind of addition of the recruitment teams, some fans were wondering what are the key performance indicators for a kind of group like this? Are they grouped in with the manager's results as well? And what are they kind of judged against from the board perspective?
Well, that's obviously what I would say is that, yeah, they have performance indicators, and it's I meet on a monthly basis with Graham to go through those indicators. Now we'll have he's come back to me with a new action plan over what he wants to achieve over the year. To be honest with you, at this moment in time, we are focused entirely on some aspects of the transfer window and some with regards to the squad, which there may still be changes coming up in that, and we'll try to be able to see how that manifests itself over the next wee while up to the transfer window. But I'll not go into exact details. I'll pass the buck in that one and leave that for Graham and PJ to talk about, because what we are wanting from him and Graham is that strategic plan, seeing how we can develop, looking at, right, I think a key weakness of us is it's only the first team. And we need to see, right, and that's one of the challenges that I've put towards Graham is like, is it about, do we have a strategic partnership with a club? How can we get in, I was going to call it an under-20 side, but a side that sits underneath the first team that can give, we've got a number of trialists at this moment in time, and it's like looking great to see them in actual game, whereas we can't play them at this moment in time, and it's just given that opportunity. So these are the sort of things that we would want to work together to build that better, and there'll also be other things that we'll work on as a board with Graham. But as I say, everyone's judged, and ultimately, we'll see how that goes. But it's a strategic appointment that will be judged not over a couple of weeks. It will be judged over time, and hopefully, it will really bring about success.
Just quickly, sorry, Gordon, just on the kind of partnership agreements that you discussed there, one of the questions we got on, I think it referred back to the kind of May Zoom meeting. I think was a discussion at the time, and I'm not sure if this is related, about kind of signing partnership agreements with other clubs. Was that something that came to be, and kind of if so, what are the kind of benefits that we would be expecting to see from that? Would it be loan players, young players coming up to feed the first team, that kind of thing?
There's nothing in place at the moment. Again, there was going to be a greater drive for that through some of the changes that were happening in the SPFL, and that never occurred. That was held back. I know Stenhousemuir have won with Hibs, and are set to now. I think they might have announced one with Stirling University as well, or certainly Syngenta as well. So they've got some partnerships in place. With us, we've got good relationships with a number of Premiership clubs, and we continue to talk to them. And I think it's obvious. We've had a good relationship there with St Mirren. We've had players in from Rangers, so that's a traditional route that we're going down at this moment in time. We can investigate if we need for loan players, but there's nothing finalised at this moment in time. But it's certainly something to consider. But it has to be right for us. It has to be the right thing. We can't have players coming in and just expecting a place announced in. A player, the person always has to be of the right quality, and it has to be the full agreement of the manager.
Yep. Sorry, Boise, I interjected. Were you wanting to fire more questions?
Well, we were just touching on the current squad, and you were saying looking ahead to the January transfer window. Can we expect to see any, loans or that before January, or is it just a couple of additions you think are needed to bolster in the run to the finish line?
I think, well, was it no Ronnie McDonald that gave the phrase of the players are there until they find somebody better for their position? You know, I think that's me going back to the history books. Danny might say something else. It's like, again, you've always got to be looking. You've always, you know, and players come into training. Sometimes there's players that are unattached that are there that they will look over and see. There's sometimes options for loans that you can see. It's about keeping a competitive squad. And also, I think in recent weeks and days, you've also seen the effect that a couple of injuries can have, because sometimes people think, oh, the squad's huge, and then suddenly you have a few injuries and boom, you know, we haven't even seen or hardly seen Jonathan Page. I mean, I think he broke a bone in his foot, I think, in the first 5 minutes of the Morton game, you know, and that then played through, you know, and I know he's just got his, you know, he's just slowly getting back, you know, and it just shows you we need the squad, and we always need to look to say, right, okay, can we do better? I think that's the challenge that I would be putting down to the football department. We always want to be doing better. So that's a long-winded way of saying I don't know. I'm sure you know, and there may well be movement before the summer transfer window finishes. And remember, of course, that we can, as a League One club, there's opportunity for loans a month after as well in September. So there's opportunities there that we can potentially bring in others, or others go, or whatever. We'll see. The challenge for lower league clubs, of course, is, and this is shared by many, the challenge has been always about the League Cup starts so early that you have to have fully signed up players for the League Cup, and many clubs this year tried to say, can we play trialists, can we do this? And it's against the rules and can't be done. And so, you know, we'll see. But that's, again, I'm glad to say that's the manager's decision. It's no mine.
So no, we never got the exclusive you were digging for there, boy, say sadly. But maybe next time we might chuck an update on it later on. Next time. So yeah, I think for a lot of the points for the kind of on-field matters, I think we have hopefully covered. There were obviously a lot of questions and kind of similar themes within that. So if we take matters off the field, perhaps you'll be a wee bit more comfortable discussing this kind of stuff, Gordon. So yeah, there was a good question that I got in, and I thought this would be a great one to pose to yourself, and it's maybe a bit kind of posing to a politician that's just taking charge of a country, but we'll put it to you.
So don't compare me with Boris, please.
No, not at all. So what is going to be different now that you are the chairman, or will it just be the kind of same old story, new promises and no delivery? Can you give the fans some assurances that you're really looking to drive home this change?
Absolutely, but I was going to swear there in the sense of, shall we just call it BS? I could give you plenty of BS about this and that, and the reality is I've got to prove it by actions. I'll be sunk if the board don't back me 100%, and I was very clear about that before I took on the role, that was the approach that I wanted to take, was the greater partnership, the working groups, involving supporters. That was essential for me. I'll be sunk if supporters say, I'm not saying, but you know, that maybe some folk like to criticise but don't want to do anything else, and will just sit back. I've got to prove it by actions, because I think folk have heard so much, you know, through time. I've heard stories, I've heard, you know, I was at that meeting in the Clyde Supporters Club in Rutherglen where it was, in 5 years' time we'll be challenging for Europe. And I think in 5 years' time we're in, you know, in two, you know, so it's, you know, it was, you know, there's, you know, again, jumping into cliches here, but words are so easy. It's the actions that has to be taken. what I can say is that, yeah, you could say there'll be some folk that'll be disappointed with me because I'm not a millionaire. But what I would say is that, I'll work as hard as I can. I've learned from what I've learned over the last week while is nobody's 100% bad, nobody's 100% perfect, and I've can learn from other people that I've worked with on the board, and I understand. I come from an informed position over, what maybe could have been done better in previous times, what we need more of, and there was a wee part of me that, well, I had a choice to make, and don't want to get sort of lying on the psychiatrist's couch here, but the choice I had to make for my family as well over, right, do I walk away and say, right, well, I've done my bit, and that's it, and let it go for somebody else, and or do I think, right, well, what if I implement some of the stuff that I know and I would like to see but hasn't happened yet? And I felt it was just a wee bit of me kept nagging away at me saying, no, go for it, try it, and see if that doesn't work out. I'll be out in a couple of years anyway. I need to try it. I need to give it a go so that I can walk away then and say, well, I've tried my best. I want to try my best. I want to work hard for the club. It's my club, our club. It's a club which I think, should be achieving better, but that's not going to be easy. And we've not got any given right that means that we can because of our history. We've got to demonstrate that on the park and be aware of the threats that exist. And if we can work better together and folk can see somebody who is genuine and who is wanting the best interest for the club at all times, then with their support, we can make things happen, and hopefully that'll be in a positive way.
Yeah. One question that did come in, which I think ties in quite nicely with that last sentiment, Bob, was what opportunities are there to bring in significant funds and income other than the usual programmes of income generation? And we kind of touched on it before with, Montrose and Arbroath. Where do you think Clyde rank in terms of potential compared to the other SPFL clubs around us for that income generation and really making a good step forward?
I think one of the challenges that we have had, and again, I'll probably come down and look at this again from the eyes of the location and making the location work for us, because it is going to be extremely tough unless there's significant changes in that relationship and how we can move things forward in order to generate those opportunities. Because I think one of the things that I would say is we can't keep going back to the same well time after time and say, well, give some more money or give some, right, we'll put season tickets up to £1,000 each, or whatever. And geez, that's going to be a meme, isn't it? Right. But it's like being able to say, right, okay, there's a limit to what can be done in that way. So at times, yeah, we've looked at various creative schemes and just trying to see, right, how can we implement money, and we can look at that, and if there's ideas that folk have, by all means, do so, tell us. The one thing I would caution about though is, like, sometimes we get so complicated with these short-term fads or get-rich-quick schemes, or it's really quite complicated deals which will make the cake bigger, and we've got to split it 3 or 4 ways in order to, and we'll get a wee bit more out of it. It just makes it so damn hard. And I guess some of my dream would be for us to get into a level of simplicity of, I know it gets teased sometimes of the pie stalls or whatever, but there's the catering, there's the hospitality, that's it. We can guarantee there's 30 grand that comes in from there, there's 50 grand that comes in from the advertising board, and then you begin to creep up to what I said, to some of the bit the budgets that make us competitive, not through rocket science, just through bog standard stuff. And I think that's what we need to look at, because again, we can get some things, and you've got to think, what, are we seriously turning around and saying that every single person who's held the commercial post at Clyde has been wrong? They've all struggled. They've all found it really difficult. They've all gone round, we've tried various things, and it's so that for me is why we need to look at the sort of fundamental changes. Other clubs can have 7 days a week activity in their stadiums. They can rent out the pitches, etc. And that, we've got to be able to see, right, how can we develop more and more income streams in order to provide the necessary support for the manager. I think also, and one of the things that's going to be a bit back to the governance, when things are so complicated and when you're running hard in order to square the budget each year, mistakes get made because of that pressure. And I well mind one season, and it might have been the promotion season, where we really struggled in order to get the last 2 months' wages paid, and we had to rely upon a personal donation from a supporter, and that was the happiest I felt, and that probably surpassed the promotion feeling day, because it's the utter relief. And that's, again, it's that challenge of trying to square the budget when things, are such, it's pushing a boulder up the hill, and it's hard. But again, without getting down about that, or just getting told, oh, that's the same old story, here we go again. What did we achieve in that season? We achieved, despite all the challenges we faced in that season, with the great team ethic on the park and off the park, the relationship between the players and the supporters. And that, for me, I want to recreate that. I want to see how that can grow. And because that was the powerhouse in that season, was that relationship, and it was that feel-good factor and that level of expectancy. And there's no reason why even though we might be underdogs in some of the games, how we can't achieve more and more.
If I may flip the kind of Cation Broadwood income thing on its head slightly, Gordon.
Yep.
Obviously, the comparative costs between, say, continuing on at Broadwood with then, say, running your own stadium, let alone obviously the initial cost of, say, potentially getting that in place, that's obviously going to be a big part of any decision that would be made going forward as well. Football stadiums aren't.
They're not cheap, are they?
No. It's, listen, there's challenges ahead, but I think the key that we have to make is, going back to Boyce's earlier point, take the emotion out of it. It's putting together that sort of cost-benefit analysis of being able to say, right, where are we? What can we do? What the cost? What opportunities are there that exist that may release funding that utilises, for example, our community interest company status? What can do that? Is there opportunities to purchase land? Is, again, the value of having, making sure that the foundation is strong, robust, and producing good things? Can it lever in additional support that can support, or rather increase the reputation of the club and help the club in that? And again, so that we're looking at the successful models. You look at your Montrose, again, strong foundation that's there, footprint within the community, as well as having a business model there that generates cash and builds in that stability, where they've been able to build a team over 3 or 4 years, and it's that sustained progress. That's what you want to do. You can have a flash in the pan, or somebody throws a lot of money at it for a season, then it disappears the next. I think you're absolutely right. We've got to go in this with our eyes open. I'm not selling it. I mean, for me, you look at Broadwood and you think, right, see if the rent, it's actually no bad. In fact, it's good. The floodlights go out, Lanarkshire will fix. So there's many positives there about being a tenant. However, it's recognising the limitations of that and the limitations of how you want to grow, and matching our expectations of supporters versus what is there. And I think that is a challenge. So, as I said, relationship-wise with North Lanarkshire, we thank them for the work that they do for the club, and that is great on the ground. It's been fantastic. And it's taking the emotion out of it. So it's not a case of they're all bad or we're all good or whatever. It's looking at, right, cost-benefit analysis, staying at Broadwood, what can we reasonably expect that player pool to be, the squad, what can it be, what kind of income can we generate, moving here, right, okay, there's going to be additional costs, but what can the player squad be there, and we've got to make that judgment and bring it back to the supporters to decide and to determine, yeah, that's what we want to do, that's where we want to go. And that's, for me, is really essential. For me, we've got to learn from the past as well. Can it be a ground share again? No. I don't think moving in somebody else's terms is jumping from, is no good. And I think that's where complications have arisen. Can't happen, as far as I'm concerned. And if we were to ground share in the future, if we were to move to a ground and we were ground sharing, then it'd be a case of that's it would be in our choice and our terms, as it were, as opposed to trying to go into another complicated relationship. Is to try and build in simplicity so that we can survive and thrive later in the future. And the quick thing I would also say, and it sort of builds upon your point, Paul, is I don't think we can, I can sit here and say, if we were to move to our own stadium, per se, then suddenly we'd be challenging at the top league again within days or that next season. It would be hard work. It would be really hard work, but it would give you that element of control and the potential, and that would put you in a better place and competitive with your peers. But as I say, if we can do that while staying at Broadwood, fantastic. We've just got to, again, be clinical about this and look at it, bring in the expertise to help us make those, get that business case scenario for both, and just see what's the best way of going ahead in the future.
Yeah, definitely sounds like a sensible decision, Paul.
Yeah, so just another thing as well, I think whatever the decision may be, I do think it still is key. A lot of the fans have kind of brought this forward for kind of yourself too, Gordon, is making sure that we still engage with local communities at present, whether we are at Broadwood or elsewhere. And obviously looking to, say, the kind of disillusioned supporters and helping increase the fan base and getting the fans maybe back again and feeling part of the club if they do feel disillusioned.
Absolutely. I mean, again, if we can increase our support by 1,000, then what a difference that would make. It's huge. And so absolutely, for me, there's recognising within the foundation as well, there's been done within the community, and there continues to be, whether it's mental health projects, school education projects. I think we held our most successful summer camp over in Christon this year as well. I think it was best part of 100 kids, I think, each day. It was a huge number that were there, and that was good. It was good to see. We've got our work over on the south side in the Tory Glen, and the south side community football there, which is good. So we've got to do better. There's changes afoot within the foundation, and that will, I'm sure, bring about further success from that. But equally, this is where I think supporters are the best people, because we need to hear from individuals, and that's where that advisory body, I think, would come in, is to give, right, well, what are the best ideas for bringing people in? What's affordable to the club? What will folk recognise? What will not insult season ticket holders that, such and such, all these folk are getting in for nothing, and it's not right. It's like being able to say, right, what's best for the club and what supporters. So it's looking for those ideas, because to actually think that 7 or 8 guys in the board have a monopoly on every good idea is a pile of nonsense. It's about it's about hearing from the supporters of, right, let's try that idea. But recognising as well, and this is the wee stick as opposed to the carrot, is that if a fiver for every idea that's put on Prime Bovril or our own forum, it's about backing up with actions over a consistent period of time. And for me, there's a wee phrase recently and when I was at training at my work, and it was, we've got to be it. So i.e. we've got to believe what we want to do there, and you got a wee piece of that from what I said in my opening article on the website. So as well as be it, we've got to do it. So therefore, it's got to be backed up by actions. It's got to be done. And laterally, we've got to stick with it, because that is the big challenge. Stick with it. So if we get a couple of sticky runs on the pitch, difficult results, does that mean we throw everything up in the air and walk away from all of these ideas? Maybe in the past, it's distracted us. We have got to, so we've got to be it, we've got to do it, we've got to stick with it. And that is it's essential for us as a club, so that we get that strategic overview and we don't get battered around, because as I said there, progress isn't a straight line. It's going to go up and down, there's going to be challenges. But if people are better informed, hear about things, can talk about things, have easier access to directors, have formal access to directors through the advisory body, through the working groups, then we stand a chance. Doesn't mean it's going to be overnight success, but we stand a chance, and I think we need to try and give that a go.
Yeah.
So let's stick with it.
Yeah. So in the interest of no overnight success and touching on the 5-year plan you spoke about at the Rutherglen Town Hall of Promising Europe, what is your 5-year plan, Gordon, for Clyde Football Club?
My 5-year plan would be, I would love us in 5 years' time to be, you're going to hold me to this, aren't you?
It's recorded,
absolutely.
So it's there for everyone. Yes.
I want us to be in that position where we have got a playing budget which is competitive with our peers, and that's, and so we're not always talking about, and it's probably to move those lines that I talked about. I would love us then to be in that place where if we have a poor season on the park and maybe it's been a tough season financially or whatever, then the lowest we go is middle to lower part of League One. I think we've got to try and change that. And it's a big ask, but we need to, that's what I want to aim for, at least to try and achieve towards that. To solve this issue with regards to location one way or t'other, so that we get that opportunity to increase our income, to be competitive, and to ensure that our pride in the club never changes. We love our club, but we want to ensure that we don't rely on history or stories from the past. It's about creating the stories for the future, and if we work together, then we stand a chance of doing that.
I think that is a great sentiment to wrap it up on, gentlemen. It is about creating the facilities for future memories and our own, hopefully, future histories. Gordon, it's been a great insight to obviously what your plans are ahead. It will always be interesting. It's never dull, as you'll be well aware, with Clyde Football Club. Obviously, the kind of working groups, I'm assuming you said earlier on, trying to get something in maybe later this week for fans?
Certainly within the next week. If this, within the next week, it'll be out, and it'll be through owners' communication. So therefore, that will give people the opportunity to have a look at it, and be able to consider if that's something they want to be part of. And regardless, they will always be kept updated of it through the owner communications that we have, but we'll make sure that something goes out relatively quickly for folk to be involved.
Brilliant. And yeah, obviously, it goes without saying, we wish you all the best for your tenure as chairman. Hopefully, will be nothing but successful. We all have to work in the same and pull in the same direction to achieve that, though, as you say. Boise, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Gordon, thank you once again. We will be back on our usual live slot a week on Friday as we're recording this, a week today as this goes live. And we will be back to talking on-field matters, hopefully a couple of wins under the belt by then. So until then, come on the Bully Wee.
On the Clyde.